Mr. Capri, you're charged with trafficking in methamphetamine or MDMA, more than 10 grams, less than 200 grams. That is a first-degree felony. Again, you are entitled to a bond, so I am going to give you a bond. I have a particular case. Obviously, if you all are seeking to have the bond. Good afternoon, sir. If you can just tell me your name and your date of birth. All right, date of birth.
11/1997.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Capri, you are here for your initial appearance. You were arrested pursuant to an arrest warrant, so probable.
Judge, this happened in November. Oh, before I get to that, we also self-surrendered for the court's edification. We self-surrendered. He was in California. I had him fly back specifically for this case. I was notified by the U.S. Marshal Service and given the opportunity to surrender him. U.S. Marshal Service was beyond professional in this case. Just essentially, what happened here was there was two vehicles.
Yes, sir.
Neither of the vehicles are registered to Mr. Capri personally. An officer approaches the vehicles. One vehicle, he says, smells like marijuana. He searches that vehicle, finds something in that vehicle that's unrelated to Mr. Capri. The second vehicle, and he doesn't even see Mr. Capri on the scene at this point. The second vehicle, they then inspect. There's one person in that vehicle. There's two bags next to that person, both in the passenger side of the vehicle. One bag has drugs in it and some other items. The other bag has what he initially says, and he doesn't put this in his affidavit, he initially says that he tests it, and it tests as 27 grams of cocaine, which is just under the trafficking amount of 28 grams. When he then sends it in, allegedly, it becomes MDMA. So I also have his original report that says when he originally tested it, it tested as cocaine. Inside that bag, there's some items that he says belong to Mr. Capri, an identification and some paperwork. Sure. He then sends things off to get printed. None of the things in that bag come back to Mr. Capri as his fingerprints. I think there were several latent prints taken off. None of them match Mr. Capri. At that point, then Mr. Capri approaches the officer and is now on the scene, was not in the vehicle, and doesn't make any admission that the bag is his or anything like that. The officer then goes one step further and goes on Mr. Capri's Instagram, and on one picture in his Instagram, there's a picture of him standing next to a bag that looks like the bag that was in the car. Now, I know PC was already found, so I'm not going to argue PC, but it's really screaming at me, but I won't argue it. But I mean, the case law on this is so very clear. And I use two very, very, I think, esteemed cases. One of them is Edmond v. State, and the other one is McCrae v. State. And I'll just give you a very brief on it.
Right, so let me ask you this before we get into the case.
Yes.
One, has a copy been given to the state?
I'll give her a copy, I'm sorry.
Because certainly last thing.
It's kind of an amazing case. The police raid a house on a warrant. The guy's hiding in the closet with wet cocaine next to him in a hole that his head is within 1 foot of the hole. On the stove is cooking cocaine. Next to the stove is his ID and some paperwork. In a bedroom in the house is more paperwork that belongs to him. The court found that's still not enough for constructive possession. It's kind of an amazing case, and I'll give you the exact site for it, but it's Edmond v. State, and the state has a copy of it. The other one is McCrae. In McCrae, they're pulling a guy over. They pull him over, he jumps out of the car and makes a run for it. As he's running, the officer sees that he's playing with his waistband and makes a throwing motion. He puts him down on the ground, arrests him, and tells the other cop, hey, go back and see what he threw. They find a baggie of cocaine, no fingerprints on it. They print it, no fingerprints on it. And the court says, that's not enough for constructive possession. Those cases are so much closer to constructive possession than this case. And I would just ask the court, in considering a bond, to look at the case, to look at the affidavit that's with the case. And I understand that the typical bond on this is $50,000. I'm asking for a $10,000 bond. I on my way here on the train, I was typing up a motion to dismiss. It's just there is not enough here.
And I'll stop you there. I mean, obviously, you know that the motion to dismiss is for another day.
I never failed to appear, as long as I've represented him.
As long as you've represented him, there is at least one.
I've represented him since he was like, I don't know, 17. Yeah, there might be one really far back in the past.
There's one from 2016. Before I determine conditions of bond and bond amount, state, is there anything that you all wish to add?
No, Your Honor, as a Like the attorney said, they're not arguing PC. The PC has already been found. PC has been found for trafficking, so the state would ask that you give a bond of $50,000. The state would actually ask that you increase the bond, as the defendant is a professional rapper. As the counsel has indicated, he flew in from California. He is also, when you do a search, listed as a Haitian American. He does not have any ties to Orlando. He's from Pompano Beach, but again, he flew in from California. So the state would not only ask that you have the bond at $50,000, in light of his occupation and lack of ties to Orlando, that it actually be increased, and one of the conditions be that he surrender his passport.
If I can just address that very quickly, Judge. He is a proud Haitian American, but he is American. He has a U.S. passport. He doesn't have any plans on leaving the country. We've faced cases that are 10 times this case, and I've won, by the way, but we'll put that in another bucket. But the fact that he's a rapper doesn't give you a legal purpose to raise the bond. So I would still ask for a $10,000 bond, Judge.
All right, well, and Mr. Capri, you're charged with trafficking in methamphetamine or MDMA, more than 10 grams, less than 200 grams. That is a first-degree felony. Again, you are entitled to a bond, so I am going to give you a bond. The strength of the case, as well as everything that was set forth in the arrest affidavit. I understand the arguments presented by your counsel. I think one of the things that was left out was, well, you weren't necessarily claiming ownership of the bag. You were requesting that the funds within the bag be turned over to you. So there at least is some tie, seems like, to the court, to that bag. Nonetheless, I think in terms of bond, I am going to slightly increase the bond. I think based upon your, not the fact that you're a rapper, I think that has no binding, but the other factors that the court considered is your prior criminal history, including 12 prior felony convictions, 2 misdemeanor convictions, 1 failure to appear. That was quite some time ago, so I'm not giving a ton of weight to the failure to appear, but I think an appropriate bond in this case would be $75,000, so that's going to be what the court sets the bond at. As conditions of your bond, I am going to order that you not return to the scene of the offense, which is 910, irritability. Additionally, you are not to possess or consume any drugs or controlled substances without a valid prescription. Particular case, obviously, if you all are seeking to have the bond